The wind carried salt and secrets along the dunes of Driftwood Cove, where 16-year-old Mira Hale walked every evening with her canvas satchel clinking softly at her side. Inside the bag lay 3 empty soda bottles she had scrubbed clean, their labels peeled off so no brand or slogan could betray what she was about to entrust to the water. At home, Mira rarely spoke above a murmur. At school, her voice vanished entirely. Yet here, accompanied only by gull cries and the endless hush of the tide, she plotted daring conversations she could never attempt in daylight. She reached the tide line just as the sun brushed the horizon, mixing tangerine flashes with bruised purple clouds. Waves licked her sneakers before retreating, as though testing her confidence. Mira squatted, set the bag in the sand, and withdrew a spiral notebook nestled among the bottles. Its pages were soft from coastal humidity, each sheet already half curled like the petals of a tired flower. She uncapped her pen and wrote in slanted letters, "I wish I could raise my hand once without my heart running away from me." She tore out the page, rolled it tightly, and slipped it inside the first bottle. The second sheet read, "I wish people would hear me before deciding who they think I am." Into the second bottle that line went. On the third, she wrote in darker ink, pressing so hard the letters scored dents through the paper, "I wish I knew what I'm worth. 3 wishes sealed beneath green glass." She fitted corks into each mouth, then coated them with wax she'd melted at home on a tea light. From her pocket, she took a stub of white chalk and numbered the bottles 1, 2, and 3, as though they formed steps on an invisible staircase. Her finish, she stood and waded ankle-deep into the water, gasping when the April cold reached her skin. 1, she whispered, and set the first bottle adrift. 2, the second bobbed next to the first, then drifted apart as a mild current teased them southward. 3, the last glass cylinder rode a cresting wave, spun once, and disappeared behind a veil of seafoam. Mira stayed long enough to be sure none beached itself at her feet. She imagined them gliding beyond the cove's shelter into the open sound, then farther still toward whatever coasts the Atlantic might deem fit. She had no expectation that anyone would receive them. The act itself, surrendering fears to be tumbled and buffeted until the ink vanished, felt like rehearsal for speaking aloud. When she finally turned back toward the dunes, moonlight already traced silver edges along each ripple, as if signing a silent contract with her hope. The next morning, she trudged up the school stairs with her head low, wearing earbuds that weren't connected to any music. Pretending she couldn't hear taunts or gossip had become her armor. In history class, Mr. Calder discussed early explorers who mapped unknown coastlines by throwing weighted lines overboard and recording depth. Mira's hand twitched once toward the air when Calder asked for volunteers to present on cartography. The impulse dissolved when she pictured 25 faces swiveling toward her, eyebrows raised, evaluating. She stared at her notebook until shapes blurred. Lunch was no easier. She sat alone near a window facing the soccer field, nibbling soggy fries while classmates traded weekend plans. She wanted to tell them she loved cartography, that her room at home was plastered with old maritime charts her father found in junk shop, that she could trace the currents by heart, even know why Driftwood Cove was sheltered from most storms. But the cafeteria seemed to swallow such sentences before they formed. By dismissal, the day had drained her. She shuffled down the wide steps, only to halt at the sight of a bottle resting inside her backpack's side pocket. Green glass, faint scratches from sand, and a wax-sealed cork. For a moment, she thought someone was taunting her, had somehow spied on her ritual and returned the wish to mock her. Dread clamped her lungs as she eased the bottle out. Chalked onto the glass, weather-smudged yet visible, was the numeral 1. Hands trembling, she pried out the cork. A dry paper roll emerged, smelling faintly of seaweed. Unrolling it, she read, "A single fact you love is stronger than 1,000 fears. Choose one and speak it aloud tomorrow. No signature, no date, only those 12 words." She reread them 5 times, feeling a warmth rise that had nothing to do with the mild spring sun spilling across the steps. Someone, somewhere, had heard her. Not just heard, but answered. She tucked the message into her geometry textbook, where she was sure she'd revisit it, and hurried home, thoughts skimming like pelicans just above the water's skin. That night, she sat at her desk, chart of the Outer Banks pinned to the wall above her, and pondered. One fact I love. It came quickly, as natural as breathing. She adored the concept of true north, the magnetic pole that guided compasses even when storms hit every star. She wrote the sentence on an index card. Earth's molten core creates a magnetic field that helps us find our way home. All evening, she whispered the line, paced her room, mouthed the syllables until they tasted less dangerous. When dawn stained the horizon coral, she read it one last time before sliding the card into her pocket. In first period, she waited, heartbeat hammering, palms damp. Mr. Calder asked, "Can anyone explain why Polaris appears fixed in the night sky?" Mira's card nearly burned through her jeans. She inhaled the briny memory of her secret beach and raised her hand. "Mira?" the teacher said, surprised as she spoke. Her voice fractured on the first syllable, but she found the compass point she'd chosen and gripped it mentally. "Because," she said more clearly, "Polaris is almost directly above Earth's rotational axis, so it doesn't seem to move as the world spins." A tiny pause. And Earth's molten core, it creates the magnetic field that keeps compasses pointing north, so even if clouds hide Polaris, you can still navigate. Silence. Then Calder smiled. "Exactly right. Thank you." A couple of classmates nodded, and one girl, Kari from soccer, tossed Mira a quick grin. Heat flushed Mira's cheeks, but the heat felt like dawn rather than embarrassment. She'd done it. A fact she loved, anchored herself against the tide of fear. That afternoon, she stood at the cove again, this time with 2 freshly washed bottles and 1 gently used. She filled the first with gratitude. "Thank you, whoever you are, for guiding me. Today I spoke. My voice didn't shatter the world, but it didn't shatter me either." The second page held a new wish. "I want to have a real conversation with someone who isn't family. What do I need to know?" She resealed both bottles, numbered them 4 and 5. She'd skipped 3 when bottle 2 had not yet returned, and sent them swaying into the twilight sea. Days passed. Bottle 2 remained lost in some eddy, but bottle 4 reappeared on the stoop Saturday morning inside a wicker basket used long ago for newspapers. The message: "Listen twice before you speak once." People offer maps to themselves if you study the legends in their eyes. Mira traced the ink as though it were braille for her soul. That afternoon, when she biked to the corner store for bread and milk, she noticed Mrs. Albert struggling to lift cat food bags into her trunk. Mira approached, remembering the instruction to listen. She asked whether she could help. Mrs. Albers exhaled relief, accepted, and soon they chatted about the litter of kittens she'd rescued. Mira listened, nodded, then mentioned her own cat, Orion, whose crooked tail resembled a question mark. Mrs. Alvarez laughed. The sound felt like gulls swooping through open window panes. A conversation, small, maybe, but mutually real. Monday, Mira brought leftover brownies, her dad's specialty, to school, and offered one to Kari, the soccer player who'd smiled in history class. Kari took a bite, eyes widening. "So good. I didn't know you baked." They talked through the lunch bell, maps, sea glass, the strange comfort of beachcombing alone. Mira remembered to listen twice. She realized conversation was not a test, but a current, sometimes gentle, sometimes swift. One simply had to keep swimming. A week later, bottle 2 finally tumbled ashore during a nor'easter, wedging into a driftwood crevice where Mira found it while surveying storm debris. Sand crusted the glass, but chalk, number 2, still glowed faintly. Inside, the message had blurred edges, ink bled by brine. "You won't know what you're worth until you spend yourself on something that matters." The words struck deeper than the first 2 notes. Worth, she thought, wasn't a label another person pasted on you. It was something minted in action. Yet what action? Her life revolved around tide charts and silent dinners with her father. Her mother, abroad coordinating disaster relief, video called only twice a month from distant time zones. Still, the message gnawed gently, like a clam boring through a shell, until opportunity arrived in unexpected clothing. The annual spring showcase approached, a talent evening held in the school auditorium. Many students performed slam poetry or indie rock covers. Some displayed photography in the lobby. Kari asked if Mira planned to participate. "No talent," Mira muttered. Kari raised one eyebrow. "You talk about maps the way composers talk about music." "That's talent," Mira laughed, but doubt clung like wet sand to her ankles. On her walk home, she found a fragment of cobalt bottle glass, shaped like a curved triangle, edges worn smooth. She tucked it into her pocket, thinking it looked like a sail. That night, she drafted another letter, placed it into bottle 6. "How do I spend myself on something that matters when I'm half scared of my own shadow?" She sent it into a choppy sea under a starless sky. 4 days later, Bottle 6 returned during dawn's low tide, rolling against her sneaker. The message: shadows prove there is light behind you. Turn and face it. Then carry that light where darkness lingers. The note's paper bore a faint watermark, a compass rose. Mira held it against the sunrise until the wet sheet glowed translucent gold. Light behind me, she rehearsed. Carry it. She attended the next showcase planning meeting, heart ricocheting. I want to present, she told the faculty sponsor, Ms. Topher. Wonderful, what medium? Mira swallowed. A map. Silence. Actually, a live drawn one, while I explain how currents weave histories together. Ms. Topher beamed. Ambitious. We'll put you after the jazz trio. That way the stage can handle the visual setup. Over the following week, Mira sketched, erased, and resketched a massive poster-sized chart of Driftwood Cove and its adjacent inlets, layering arrows for trade winds, dashed lines for shipping routes, colored washes for water temperatures. She practiced in the garage, father's boat tools watching like curious sentries. She timed herself 8 minutes to narrate how recorded currents saved lives on merchant ships, how whales followed those same highways, how certain plastic debris also traveled identical paths to land on distant shores. Messages we never meant to send. The night before showcase, nerves roared louder than ocean breakers. She walked to the beach with no bottles, only bare hands. She needed the tide's neutral witness. Moonlight fractured across moving water, so each ripple looked like glass trembling on a drumhead. Mira closed her eyes and imagined placing her fear into the sea, not as a bottled note, but as raw water, diffuse and uncatchable. I know what I'm worth, she told the waves. Maybe the ocean responded. Maybe it merely muttered, busy with lunar obligations. Either way, she felt steadier walking home. Backstage next evening, she peeked from behind curtains as folding chairs filled. Peers, parents, younger siblings squirming. Kari waved from the second row. Mira's father stood rear of the auditorium, arms crossed in his denim jacket, his version of a cheering section. When the jazz trio ended, stagehands set up Mira's easel and microphone. Her legs threatened mutiny. Yet she remembered the messages. A fact you love, listen twice. Spend yourself. She stepped into the lights. They dazed her at first. Beyond them, faces blurred into a single organism that inhaled as she exhaled. Good evening, she began, voice soft, but it didn't crack. As she spoke, she used a charcoal pencil to outline the cove's familiar curve, labeling shoals, depth markers, and lighthouse coordinates. She told the story of 1852 sailors trapped on a sandbar until a local woman used tide patterns to steer rescuers. She drew arrows showing Gulf Stream loops carrying a single Portuguese man of war all the way to Iceland, a biological impossibility until it happened. Then she paused, turned to the audience. We are like bottles, she said. Each of us carries messages, fears, hopes, questions. The currents of our choices decide whether we beach ourselves safely, shatter, or travel farther than expected. But bottles can return changed, and so can we. A hush thicker than seawater filled the hall. Mira's heartbeat slowed, settling into a cadence even calmer than when she roamed the beach alone. She finished by shading in the coastline, signed the map, and stepped back. Applause surged, surprising her enough that she almost laughed aloud. She scanned the rows. Kari clapped above her head. Ms. Topher wiped an eye. Her father's smile beamed like a lighthouse, always visible no matter the weather. Mira bowed, cheeks burning pleasantly, and exited to the wings, where performers waiting next offered high fives. Later, as people mingled in the lobby, strangers approached to compliment her map or ask questions about currents. She answered each, remembering to listen twice, and realized she could gauge a person's interest like a geographer reading topography. She was practicing cartography of conversation. That weekend, she returned to the shoreline with fresh supplies, not bottles this time, but a small wooden box with a latch. She placed within it copies of every message she'd ever received, plus her own outgoing notes. The wishes, the milestones, the new lines she planned to add. She buried the box above the high tide mark, marking the spot with a shell cairn. The bottles had served their purpose. They belonged to the sea's stories now, but the wisdom they carried resided inside her ribcage. She still walked the beach most evenings, but instead of whispering fears, she spoke plans. Take an advanced geography class, invite Kari over to bake brownies, email the Maritime Museum about summer internships. Sometimes, when waves glinted at particular angles, she imagined she saw glass bobbing far offshore. Maybe there were more messages waiting, or maybe another shy dreamer across the world had set forth her first timid hope. Either way, Mira lifted a hand and waved, confident the gesture would be understood. One August afternoon, as cicadas drilled the humid air, a letter arrived with a battered foreign postmark, Isla del Viento. Inside, on paper flecked with salt crystals, flowed handwriting she recognized from the tide-borne notes. Dear Mira, your map reached our island long before your bottle did. Thank you for sending both. They taught us the current's stories from your side of the sea. Enclosed, you'll find a photograph of our harbor, where your bottle washed ashore. Its glass now sits in our school library, reminding students that when you place hope upon water, it can sail farther than fear ever swims. Navigate bravely. Adelita R. Mira stared at the photo. Children lined a sun-bleached pier, holding her green bottle aloft like a trophy. Behind them, the harbor curved in a mirror image of Driftwood Cove. She pressed the picture to her heart, astonishment and gratitude mingling until distinctions vanished. The ocean had completed the circle. What she once released as uncertainty had returned as clear acknowledgement from unknown shores. That evening, she climbed the dunes at dusk, Kari beside her, fresh lemonade sloshing in reusable flasks. Mira spoke of applying for the museum internship. Kari shared plans to try out for the varsity debate team. I'll need a coach, Kari joked. Someone good at listening twice. Mira laughed. Above them, gulls carved wing script across fading light. Below, the sea kept erasing and redrawing the same line onto sand, patient as breathing. I used to think you had to be unbreakable glass to survive people's scrutiny, she said. Turns out it's okay to be breakable. What matters is the message you carry and the journey you take. Messages from unknown shores? Kari teased. Exactly. And the new shores you become for someone else. Night settled, calm and confident. For the first time, Mira didn't flinch when the dark unfurled. She knew there was light behind her and ahead, and she was learning to carry it. Bottle or no bottle, wherever the tide would lead.